Parliament is set for a crucial special session beginning 16th April, where three major bills are expected to be tabled: the Constitution, 131st Amendment, Bill 2026, the Delimitation Bill 2026, and the Union Territories Laws Amendment Bill 2026. On the surface, the central focus is women's reservation. The government is pushing to operationalize the long-pending Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam, which promises one-third reservation for women in the Lok Sabha and state assemblies. But behind this headline reform, critics argue, lies a much larger and more complex restructuring of India's electoral map. At the center of the debate is a proposed expansion of the Lok Sabha from 543 seats to as many as 850 seats. Alongside this, the bills also seek to end the long-standing freeze on delimitation based on the 1971 census, allowing seat redistribution using newer population data, or any census that Parliament decides by law. Supporters of the move argue that this is necessary to reflect India's changing demographics, rising population, and urbanization, and also to ensure women's reservation does not reduce existing seats. Instead, the plan proposes adding new seats to accommodate the quota. However, critics say this is where the concern begins. One of the biggest questions being raised is, why is women's reservation being tied to a massive expansion of Parliament? The opposition and several analysts argue that women's reservation could have been implemented within the existing 543 seats itself through redistribution, instead of creating nearly 300 new constituencies. They claim that by linking the two, the government has effectively bundled a politically popular reform, women's reservation, with a far more controversial structural change, delimitation, and seat expansion. Another major concern is the shift in how delimitation will be decided. The proposed framework gives Parliament the power to decide which census will be used, instead of keeping it strictly tied to constitutional provisions. Critics argue this increases political control over a process that directly affects representation in Parliament and state assemblies. There is also concern about transparency. Reports suggest MPs received draft bills only days before the special session, raising questions about whether there was enough time for consultation and debate, especially for changes of this scale. Opposition leaders further argue that creating new seats instead of redistributing existing ones allows the current political structure, where men dominate elected positions, to largely remain unchanged, while women get additional seats rather than a share of existing political space. Another sensitive issue is the potential impact on federal balance. Some states fear that population-based redistribution could reduce their representation in Parliament compared to faster-growing states, shifting political influence across regions. The bills also propose that decisions of the Delimitation Commission will not be subject to judicial review once notified, which critics say removes an important layer of constitutional oversight. On the other hand, the government maintains that these reforms are essential to modernize India's democratic structure and ensure fair representation, especially for women who currently hold only around 14–15% of seats in the Lok Sabha. As Parliament begins this high-stakes session, the debate is no longer just about women's reservation. It is also about how India defines representation, how constituencies are drawn, and who gets to shape the country's political future in the decades ahead.